I do remember going to work and having meetings and people going, glitter in your ear. And me thinking, it's not the only place there's glitter.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson and you are listening to Lost Spaces, a podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there and the people that they used to know. Ali Brumfitt is a genderqueer performance poet who lives in a static caravan with their dog Colin. We got together to discuss First Out Cafe, a venue that first opened on St Giles High Street in the West End in 1986 as London's first daytime queer venue. Ali frequented the cafe from the time they moved to London in 2010 until the cafe closed in 2011 as part of the disruption around the Tottenham Court Road area caused by the Crossrail development.
I identified as heterosexual, but I clearly wasn't. Or did I even? No, I think I identified as bisexual, but I just never told anyone. And I was married in a monogamous relationship in Oxfordshire.
To a man?
To a man. And I think I occasionally had got, I knew, I think when I was in my 20s at some point, my early 20s, I'd kind of done that thing where I'm like, oh, I'm in the area of London, I'm going to go to a gay place, I'm going to go to First Out. It's not because I'm interested in any of this or anything, but it's quite a cool place to go. So I think I'd been there for coffee, but not hung out properly there. So before that, and then before the meeting my girlfriend and going, oh, and then the dramatic, but actually as good as it could have been under the circumstances, because he was a very lovely man, so it was quite sad. But then I broke up and ran off with a lesbian.
As you do.
Yeah.
We've all done it. My favourite anecdote that you've ever told me is about the poem that you read at your wedding.
Oh, which one? The one that I read at my friend's wedding.
Oh, I thought it was at your wedding.
No.
Oh,
no.
About being single and why would you ever want to...
Oh no, I did read that one about being and the nightmare about getting married and having children. Yeah, that one. I did do that one at my wedding. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, it didn't seem to bother.
And it didn't twig.
No.
For anyone.
And the being really into lesbian porn and all the other things. No, it didn't really twig. But then I'd always said I was really anti-marriage, so I just think the whole thing was really strange.
So that is kind of weird. So was it just like I'll do it, let's go along with it?
It was literally like, oh, we've been going out for like 9 years, maybe we're never going to break up. Oh, maybe we should get married. He was in the armed forces, so there was also like, oh, legally it's going to be much better if you get blown up if we're married. And just weird, I know, and weird things about you being able to have certain benefits, and if we ever wanted a house that was to do with that. Which I didn't think we did, but there were just really boring practical reasons. And part of me go, well, why not really? Because I'm probably not going to break up with you. And we broke up within a couple of years. I think something happens in your brain afterwards and you're like, no, you really are not made for this. You were right.
But there were 9 years before the marriage, wedding, the marriage, and then there were another couple of years.
Yeah.
So what was...
I mean, I knew something wasn't really right, but I grew up in Oxfordshire, and I grew up in, no internet back in the day, no, was involved in the church, massively homophobic, and I'd had boyfriends, and basically it was the first boyfriend that I'd actually been into at all, and enjoyed his company, and, fancied a bit at least. Well, fancied quite a lot in some ways.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, this must be what it's like. This is great. And it hadn't really occurred to me that, but but I kind of knew in the back something didn't feel 100% right. But it's that thing where you think, well, it's also not terrible.
Yeah.
And then if we break up, what if I'm wrong? And there was a lot of sort of trying to work out what was not quite right and not really getting it until I started going and doing gigs, actually, more gigs in venues where there were, you know, more LGBT people after university. And it was like, oh, I get on with all these people. Oh, I fancy some of these people. And then I invited my girlfriend, who I'd met 5 years earlier, to an event. And then it kind of instantly spiraled from like about 10 minutes after we met. It was like, oh. And then there was lots of flirting that was, just flirting. That, yeah.
And so through meeting her, you were like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And this is actually who I am.
So I feel like had I been, you know, a generation after that, not growing up in Section 28, having access to the internet, not having a massively homophobic church, and a family that basically just didn't really talk about sexuality. Like, I've got a poem actually about when I was younger, and it's partly based on a conversation I had with my mum recently. And I said, do you remember that, you know, when I was 13, I asked what you would do if I turned out to be gay? And she went, no. I said, oh, you said you'd be quite sad because I'd had a really hard life. And she went, I don't remember saying that, but I still think it's a bit true. And I was like, I mean, it's definitely hard in some ways, but I think you need to think that through.
Yeah, and it's partly hard because of comments like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And then when I got together with Nat for ages, my mum would sort of say, your friend.
Oh, yeah.
And we had to have a significant conversation of no, I'm not inviting my girlfriend to everything if you introduce her as your friend. It's not okay.
Oh, that's so fascinating, isn't it? And then you end up thinking you need to regulate your behaviour in front of everyone because of that one word that's been used.
And they're like, oh, no, we're not homophobic, but obviously we're totally othering you. It's like I was out with my nieces who are now both grown up, sort of in the early 20s, and they were like, our parents just never mentioned... I mean, obviously, you were a couple that came to everything as a couple, and they didn't sort of mention you were friends, but they definitely never explained and Ali's broken up with James, and this is who she's dating now, or they're dating now. Or, you know, they just never had the conversation, let them work it out for themselves. And that they would have been, 10-ish, something like, you know, so young. So they're sort of, this is clearly a thing, but it just was never mentioned. It's just a bit hilarious.
I mean, in some ways you could look at that as a good thing, that they just didn't make a big deal of it, but I don't think that's probably what you're getting at, is it?
No, it's definitely there's a whole thing in my family that they just, you know, it's the drawing attention. You don't want to use the word lesbian. They've got a real thing about you know, that being a word that will make my mum sort of do a weird, so I like to use it a lot. Lesbian, total gayer, raging queer, just all those sorts of things, drop them into conversation with my mum.
Casually.
To see her sort of have a little ripple.
Yeah, for most people that word is moist, I suppose, but with your mum it's different.
That word, it's a great word.
Yeah, but there's something about it that just makes people shudder. But yeah, so if I ever meet your mum, just say total gayer as much as I can. All right. And so then when your marriage ended, what were the ripples of that? What kind of happened in terms of your family? And were you a regular churchgoer at that point? Or?
No, I wasn't by then. Although we did, and with my girlfriend, we went to church a bit. We found a queer church group in Oxford, but I sort of gradually faded out, partly with the reaction from everyone, which was just not great. And again, not openly hostile, but I just felt really uncomfortable and judged all the time. And my parents, they were just really funny about it for ages. And then, my mum got really upset, and I remember having a conversation where she was really upset, and me saying, look, actually, I'm not really sure I can deal with you being upset right now, because it's quite a lot of drama and emotion for me as well.
You. Yeah.
And I'm, saying silly things like, but what am I going to tell all my friends that I invited you to your wedding? And it's just silly things I'm sure she doesn't remember saying.
Yes, yeah.
And then it was quite a long time before they met. And then we had this thing where we went for a pub lunch and it was all going to be really awkward. And then massively unsurprisingly, because my girlfriend is just really excellent, they got on like a house on fire immediately. And then within a week, my dad was like, when's Nat coming round? And stuff like that. It was just, and it was such a shame that there was that sort of period of a year where they hadn't met, and my parents clearly didn't want to meet and kept referring to them as that woman.
Oh, wow.
It was that woman. And my dad was, trotting out all the stereotypes. Well, these people, brackets, gays, they're very promiscuous, They might not be, you don't want to throw away that thing. You don't know what their intentions are.
When has there ever been a stereotype about lesbians that they're promiscuous?
I know, right? I think my dad's just like, I didn't know. I was like, no, this doesn't happen. You get cats, you move in, you play chess.
Yeah, the joke is the second date, you hire a moving van. So what? Yeah, okay.
My dad hadn't got the memo. I just think he thought that I was clearly going to be a gay man. I was going to get like glitter shorts and be dancing around Soho in the,
We got some of that right, I suppose.
Yeah. He maybe foresaw the non-binary thing, and he was probably on it. And the promiscuous thing as well, because, being non-monogamous, he was, it's just, I'm still with the original person that I ran away with.
And so at this point, you were still in Oxfordshire?
Yeah. And I moved to London in 2010.
Okay.
Well, I didn't move. I had a house and I was commuting, but that was too much. So I got a room somewhere. But that was about 2 years after I broke up with James, maybe a year after.
Okay. And so can we, before we move into London, can we talk about Oxfordshire?
Yeah.
So it's like what?
It's not
hour and a half commute from London?
Yeah.
And it's famous for its university.
Yeah.
What else?
It has a good performance poetry scene, so I like that. It's East Oxford's got a great sort of community scene. There's this bit where there's a specific road and which has escaped my head now.
Just make something up. I'm not going to know.
I'm trying to think of the community centre that I used to go to, East Oxford Community Centre, and we used to do a lot of things at something called Catweasel, which was basically an open mic of the most unusual, different people coming to that. There'd be opera singing, and then very serious poetry, and then a bit of comedy, and then something that you really weren't sure what it was or how much drugs the person had taken. And I used to have a joke with my friend that you couldn't lose, because you went and you either felt really inspired and blown away, or just you felt really talented because you saw those people and thought, I'm really great, I should get more gigs.
Oh my God, I love that when you're on the same bill as a bunch of people that are terrible and you're like, wow, I'm okay at this. Okay. So I haven't spent that much time in Oxford, but I always imagine it's just a very kind of leafy, middle class type of town where not that much happens.
It's got really different areas. Uh-huh. So East Oxford, and I remember it's Cowley Road. The Cowley Road is quite vibrant. And then there are bits. So I used to do the odd gig in Jericho, which is a lot more sort of bookish people. And then there's other bits that are really posh and leafy. So it's really mixed, but there is quite a lot going on in pockets, but not like London, clearly.
Okay. So moving to London, what was that like for you?
I mean, I don't remember how, but really quickly, I'd been coming in anyway I did a couple of gigs for Bar Whatever before, so I'd come in and then I met someone there and I think I got invited to a sex party. So it was literally like within a few weeks moving into London, suddenly going to quite a lot of sex parties and very different
Why didn't this happen to me?
Culture. Yeah, I don't know. But also my dad died very soon after I come to London. So I got to London in January, I think, and he passed away in the May. Okay. So there was a lot going on in my life, and I went a bit haywire. I was drinking quite a lot.
Okay.
Just dating lots of people, so in a way that was quite exciting, but also a lot of it was avoidance.
Yes,
of quite significant grief.
Yeah.
But I met a lot of my friends in 2010. So yeah, next year will be the anniversary, 10-year anniversary of a huge group of friends that I met when I got to London, the sort of alternative cabaret scene, a lot of people that used to go to the sort of old style sex parties. I can't believe you can have an old style, but
So what is an old style
DIY dress up ones with lots of performance that aren't very serious. They weren't expensive, they weren't exclusive.
But wait. So you go to a sex party and you watch a performance?
Yeah, there was
do
cabaret.
that?
Well, the stuff happened afterwards, and there was like homemade low tech costumes. So none of all this latex malarkey but it was like, I remember going
with people wrapped in cling film.
going with dressed as a crocodile from Peter Pan. I'd made the thing out of egg boxes and painted it with poster paint.
And then you were like, hey, let's have sex.
There was cabaret, and then those silly things, and yes, themed rooms. And then, but I think about midnight, so they started quite, and then about midnight, everyone had lots of sex. But it was just
so what happened to your
serious.
egg carton then? Did you take it off, or were you keeping
it on?
Yeah,
I think it got pretty trampled.
Oh, okay. So everyone's like eased into it.
Yeah, but then some of the costumes do have a funny effect. I remember one where a performer who shall remain nameless, but did a performance in which they have entirely blue face paint.
Ooh.
Yeah,
so you could tell who they'd slept with.
Yeah,
by the trail.
And also anybody who'd mixed with anyone else with different face paint. It was great. There was like, you can see where XYZ person has been and who has been with the other people that have been, and it was great, like who'd made out with who and what they'd been doing by which bit of them had which bit of face paint on. It was really fun.
Oh, but wouldn't that, so my big bugbear is glitter. So if I saw anyone that had glitter on them, I just wouldn't want to touch them, have sex with them. So wouldn't it just put you off?
Glitter is a problem, I have to say. And there are a few events that I still go to, and I think glitter's banned at quite a few. Yeah, I do remember going to work and having meetings and people going, glitter in your ear, and me thinking it's not the only place there's glitter.
So you went to a bunch of sex parties, and we are going to talk about a cafe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could be getting much more interesting stories from you.
Well, not from venues so much. I mean, you can have that interesting stories. And a lot of the thing with First Out is it's a great place to go, like the day after, for your let's all get together over coffee and, reminisce or just recover. It was quite good. I really liked the fact that it was a venue that had stuff in the day. I thought that was really important because the sort of hanging out and getting to know people rather than being in a venue that you're either fornicating or the other venues which are just really loud music, and I'm not really a clubbing person. And so being able to chat over coffee with people that you may have been dancing around in ridiculous outfits with the day before was really nice.
That is really interesting because most bars, queer or not, are too loud to actually actually have a conversation or actually connect with someone unless you're connecting non-verbally with your private parts. So it is really interesting that there was a queer space in London where it wasn't about loud music and it wasn't about drinking and it wasn't about shagging someone or going home with them. But why do you think it was important that it was a queer space? Why couldn't you just meet up in any cafe?
I think there was a sense of community about it. Certainly for me, I could go in there on my own and not feel conspicuous. Not that I was looking conspicuously gay at the time, but just feel like also then there's all the bits of paper around advertising queer flat shares. Not that I wanted one. And I used to pick up all those magazines, there's Boys that's still going, I think, and then another one, I can't remember the lesbian one. You could say they wouldn't get those. Also, you could nick the free condoms from the toilets that weren't so much. It just had a better vibe.
But the lube is always terrible, that free lube. Sorry, I don't... yeah.
No, it's right, but yeah. And I mean, they're not great condoms either, but, I just put them on sex toys so that you don't have to have great confidence in them. In the same way as if they're,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, but... Yeah, and I guess it was just an atmosphere and a feeling of, I'd been in these very straight communities and feeling very alienated, and that other people were sitting in there heterosexual couples talking about heterosexual things and just assuming everyone was the same. So it was nice to have, and there were straight couples that went there as well, but it was nice to feel like they weren't in the majority, that there would be lots of people sitting around in same-sex couples and people who were, conspicuously LGBTQ, as in sat around covered in rainbows or extremely camp, or although, and feeling really, really comfortable to be in the space, even if they're just on their own working on their laptop.
Yeah, yeah.
And there were, you felt safe to go there on your own, which was really nice.
Yeah.
And the staff were always really friendly, so you could just chat. And it was great for eavesdropping. You can't do that in a bar with thumping music. And people used to row in there quite a lot. Not loud shouty rows, but couples would go and
have a passive-aggressive fight.
Yeah, have a you said you were going to, and then they'll be like, I'm terrible. I kind of love that.
So do you remember any juicy conversations that you eavesdropped on?
No, I think I saw a breakup thing once. They didn't even get to the dinner. There was lots of... There was some, and then I can't remember, I don't know exactly what had happened, but I think one of them was late, and that was the part of it. And then something happened, and they were gonna order food. And I think they did that, I felt sad for the one person, because I think they ordered the food, and then the person stormed out before the food arrives, which I always think is really awkward, because then everyone knows what's happened, because it's like, 2 meals arriving now. Although my friend had to go in the middle of a dinner recently, and that was my first thought, because we'd ordered the food and they had to go. It's they're going to think, and the staff kept asking me if I was all right, and it was like, it's okay, I haven't just been dumped. I'm happy I've now got 2 meals.
You could have milked it, Ali. I mean, come on. Could have got free dessert if you cried.
Yeah, I could have said, they've left me the bill, you have to pay. At least I can only afford my own meal. Yeah, you're right. I messed that up.
Okay, so prior to having moved to London in 2010, you had been to First Out.
Yeah.
But after moving here and being a Londoner, do you remember your first time going to First Out?
It might have been after Pride, because I know that... Your
first time?
Yeah, because I think I went to Pride in 2010. Was 2011 the year that they sort of didn't really have anything happening? It was the year before that, and I think a lot of people then met in the square and got trolleyed and that, and we went back, but came back to the area the next day for coffees and did a bit of I think we went there, and then we went to Retro Bar, which I think is also closed.
No, I think Retro Bar's still open.
Oh, good.
Oh,
I heard a rumour.
I have to do some fact checking.
I heard a rumour. I hope it's a rumour. But yeah, and I think it was a group of people that had been to Pride.
Well, so it was after your first Pride. Let's talk about the Pride.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
It was really great to feel part of it as opposed to somebody who was a kind of a sneaky spectator. Mm-hmm. And I was doing lots of flirting as well, because there was somebody that I'd met at a party that was going to be marching. So, and then sort of...
So you had your eagle eye out.
Yeah, and then I just did the whole leaping over the barrier and marching a bit with my friends, because there wasn't any of that sort of nonsense about wristbands and all that sort of... No, nobody really cared. So I think I jumped in and out of... I didn't do the whole march. I was in the crowd, but then you could meet people in the crowd and then jump in and out of the crowd. And there were lots of... Yeah, it felt quite free-flowing and not massively organised. Mm-hmm. But I didn't like it by the evening, because everyone got a bit trolleyed. And, yeah, in the square, people were a bit... Yeah, it just didn't feel as safe. Yeah.
And so the time that we're talking about when you were at First Out was the next day?
Yeah. Came back to meet people.
And so was it like everyone being hungover and...
Well, I'd gone quite early, because I didn't like people getting all drunk and falling about you. So mostly for me, it was to find out who got drunk and got off with who. And to make sure that the person that to find out who the person that I was interested in, whether they'd hooked up with anyone.
Yeah, okay.
Well, they did, but the joy of polyamory is that I think they ended up going out with both of us briefly. But I wasn't sure at the time that would have. So I remember being really annoyed that person had stayed and hooked up with this other person, being like, damn, maybe I should have stayed. But hey ho.
But it didn't make a difference.
No, it's the joys of polyamory.
Are you okay talking about that person?
The person that I hooked up with at that point turned out not to be very nice at all. So we probably shouldn't talk about them that much. Because as soon as I say, my ex was not very nice at all, everyone will go, we know who that one was. Although we did go to First Out quite a lot for a period of time. So I probably should talk about her a bit. She's moved to Berlin, so it won't be too much of a problem.
This is going out on the internet, though, you know. So
yeah, well, I mean, people all know. But yeah, it turned. But
okay. So you were with Nat at this stage, and Nat's you're still with Nat.
Yeah, and Nat didn't come to Pride because they knew in advance they wouldn't like all the crowds and the noise and all that sort of stuff.
Sensible.
I can't remember if they'd popped in. They do that quite a lot. Came to say hello to somebody. But hilariously, Nat quite liked the person who hooked up with the person I was interested in. So it was all So we were both not happy.
So if you had both just been there,
I know. If we'd have stayed and sorted it, yeah.
Okay. So at this point, you'd been with Nat for maybe a year.
Couple of years.
Okay. So you were quite queer by this stage then, of a couple of years.
Yeah.
So
over 2 years.
So there wasn't. So it wasn't a tentative.
No. It was like, yay, I found my people, and I'm also in London, and I don't have to drive home. It was really fun, and a lot of the people that I was there with, I'd met that. So that would be the summer. I would have just met them in the May, I think, is when when my dad passed away, and so I was in quite a hyped up state of, I've got all this grief, but here are my people to support me, and give me love and sex.
Oh.
And I also felt, so when we started dating, I always said with Nat that we weren't going to be monogamous, partly because I hadn't dated people of my own gender before. So it seemed really like, to get into this one relationship and stay there, I was bound to be curious about stuff. That was how I felt. I didn't know that would be the case.
But it's interesting that, I'm making assumptions here, but it doesn't sound like you did that when you were heterosexual. No, I think I mentioned it as a possibility, but it wasn't. But part of the thing was I dated other guys, and then I met this one guy that seemed okay or good, and so I stayed with him. Whereas I hadn't dated other women or non-binary people, and so I wanted to get out there really and explore. I was it's a bit like being a teenager all over again. You're like, oh my God, there's all these hot people that I didn't even know I thought were hot. Yeah.
And oh my God, sex is so much better than I thought it was. This is amazing.
And anyway, so let's talk about this person that lives in Berlin now.
Yeah.
So the day after, you go to First Out Cafe, everyone is there nursing a hangover. You find out that this person has got off with someone else.
Yeah. I think
what are your feelings?
Day. I think I didn't know what my feelings. I was just so I felt uncomfortable, but also a bit annoyed. But I don't remember it being as significant. It was just a bit like, oh bugger, I should have hung around. But I don't even remember she was at the cafe the next day. I've got such a terrible memory. And then that thing when you can't remember if a memory is like, am I making that up, or was that a different cafe, or was that a different time, or was that a different sex party, or was that a different Pride? Is it all a dream? Sometimes I will swear blind that a group of people were there, and I'll meet the person and go, do you remember that time we were at such and such? And they'll be like, I wasn't there. No, you were. No, I really wasn't. I wasn't in the country. And I'll be I'll be like telling them what they did, and they're like, you've supplanted somebody else into this memory.
So what you're trying to say is that you're a completely untrustworthy narrator here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So everything that we're talking about might just not have happened.
Well, I mean, the things happened, as in those two people definitely got together, and those are just whether they happened exactly at the right time, whether I was in First Out when I found out, the exact details. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm old now.
Okay, so then I want to talk about, you made a comment earlier about the staff at First Out being very friendly. Can you tell me about them?
I mean, again, I can't remember names, but I do remember that there was a very attractive person with, it's going to sound like every other attractive lesbian person that I like now, but they had dyed black, short, spiky hair and used to wear cut-off T-shirts with tattoos. And it just made you think, I'm going to sit at the counter quite a lot and just look at the cakes I'm just making my mind up. I can't decide what to have. I just watch you make some more coffee. But it's really difficult to start. I've never worked out how you strike up a conversation with someone when they're working.
I can't imagine you ever not being able to strike up a conversation with someone.
It's just quite difficult. There's a queue of people behind and I'm just getting into a whole chat. I'm not very good at knowing the difference between just having a chat and flirting.
Okay.
I'm really good at talking to strangers and getting to know people, and then I'll quite like one of them and I'm like, how do you go from here into the next bit? And then I'll find out later, my friends will be like, that person was totally flirting with you. And I was like, were they? You should have told me, because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, because, I'm terrible at flirting. Because how do you close the deal? How do you do that transition? Yeah. I don't know. So first out, let's talk about first out, because that's what we're here to do. Can you describe the venue?
Yeah, it's a cafe, so it's not very, doesn't look like a club. It looks a bit like an old-fashioned cafe. It had sort of a red shop front thing and big glass windows, which is also quite good, because if you wanted to avoid someone when you were coming up to it, you could see if they were sat in the upstairs, because you could pretty much see all the upstairs from the way in. And there was a sort of upstairs seating and cafe bit that was really light because of those windows. But then there was the stairs, as you went in quite quickly, there's stairs down, and that's where they used to have the sort of evening things, and where there was another bar down there, and it was a bit dingier. And it didn't have lots of areas and things. It was sort of like one big room downstairs, if I remember rightly, with a bar in the corner and really, really pokey toilets. Because I remember you asking, did I have any salacious stories about the toilets? I was like, you would not do anything in those toilets. They're just not enough room. And also,
where there's a will, Ali.
Also, I think there was only two. I'm pretty sure there really weren't very many. And you didn't go in and sort of wait in queue. There was just the door. So you'd have been really conspicuous and people would have got cross really quickly.
So in describing the venue, you were talking about being able to avoid people.
Yeah.
Who would you be avoiding?
I guess mostly there's always drama, what we used to call polydrama in the polyamorous community. It mostly wasn't to do with me, but it'd be somebody who'd had a thing with somebody who'd fallen out with, or just the person that you don't really want to have a long conversation with, or if you'd met someone at a sex party that you just thought was quite dull and you didn't really want to strike up a conversation with them, or at any other party. Or sometimes at a gig, at a gig when occasionally it's really wonderful for people to come up afterwards and be like, oh, I really liked your stuff. But occasionally there's someone who's just really wants to talk about it a lot every time they see you, and you don't necessarily want to talk to that person when you're sitting having a coffee.
So groupies, you're talking about groupies.
Yeah. I've maybe had like 3 or something like that. But yeah, people who could be groupies if you didn't make the effort to avoid them right at the beginning. You just head them off at the pass. Yeah. I don't understand anyone who would actually want a groupie. No. I much prefer people who, if I meet them, I'd rather they didn't know very much about my stuff.
Yeah, or didn't like it.
No, I don't want them not to like it. I don't think I'd care that much if they didn't like it. A lot of people don't like performance poetry, and then they, it's a bit of a stereotype. Come to the gig and they're like, "Oh no, it's not like I thought it would be. I quite like it really," but because they just assume that poetry readings are really dull.
Yeah.
And people look at a book and they read from the book, not that they sort of leap around in spangly underwear and strip. And not that I do that every gig, but they're definitely not dry occasions.
Yeah,
that sounds wrong. You know what I mean by that.
Yes, we know.
They're not moist either.
So we're still in 2010. We're still having this conversation. You said earlier that moving to London and that being around the time that your dad passed away, that meeting these people, there was a sense of comfort
Yeah.
or community from them. And my mind always just goes to the like, oh, that's dangerous. Trusting other people. Oh, no, why would you want to do that? Because you also talked about relying on alcohol and going out too much. Was there like kind of an over-reliance on other people?
Yeah, totally. And that was how I ended up in that one relationship, which was, in lots of ways quite abusive. And that turned out to be quite controlling around lots of other things. And yeah, there was a vulnerability there of like, oh, there's exciting people. And then when one of those showed me a lot of attention and was a lot of, then that totally spun out into something else. So there was definitely an element of things that I was doing and ways that I was being that were over the top. But also, during that time, I also met some of my most solid friends that I've still got now. So I think I could have been a little more cautious, but also, they were a really great community and still are, I think, really solid. Everyone's in different places, doing different things, although quite a lot of my friends are still in London. And I feel like there was quite a strong community. But yeah, I wasn't in a good place to pick up the problematic elements of that. And I think there was a certain type of people that are aware of that vulnerability and like to be controlling. And I definitely think that's how that one relationship happened.
Yeah. So 2010, you're in London, you're exploring yourself a bit more because you've got that wider network, you've got other venues and places to go. What happened beyond 2010? How long did you live in London?
I think until 2013 I started travelling around on the boat. But when I was travelling around on the boat, I was coming to London an awful lot and moving in and out of London. Mm-hmm. But I think First Out shut at the end of 2011.
Yes. Yeah. So you didn't even go there for very long.
No, and it was like I was utterly outraged. I remember like everyone getting on the phone. First Out is shutting. It's just, no, because it's like there is nowhere else in the day.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of venues, and some of them you could sit and chat in, and like, but it seemed like, oh, this is a place we can go and hang out in the day, and there weren't other places, and there still aren't many. Certainly not that are easily accessible. I remember being really shocked, more shocked than I was when, pubs and bars and other venues shut down. It seemed more like an institution to me in some way. It's like, no, not that, but it's just a little cafe.
So why do you think that is?
I think because it had more of the fact that it was a daytime and evening venue and that people could sit and have coffee. And I feel like it had more of a community feel for me. And also, it was a much broader range of age people went there than would go to some of the clubs and bars. So it just really it felt like it was important to a much broader range of the community, and also was more mixed. It felt like not an overtly gay clubbing space, it was a part of a community that also straight people would hang out with, but was predominantly queer.
And do you have any particular memories that stick out in the venue?
Yeah, it was another one with the girlfriend that wasn't very good, actually. We'd gone for cocktails in the day, and I was working at a hospital where I was head of communications, which meant that, I managed people. And I think I'd met in the day with someone who worked for me. And then I thought, we'll go to First Out because there was a cocktail hour. You can see where this is going.
But wait. So this was a working day?
It was a working day, but we knocked off a little bit early.
Okay.
So, it can't have been that early because sort of tea time usually, isn't it? Cocktail hour. It's early-ish, but not that early.
Okay.
But I think we'd been to meet someone, and then I met with this girlfriend, and the person I was working with came with me, and we had a drink in the bar, but there was 2-for-1 cocktails, I think.
Okay, I know where this is going.
Yeah. And then we got talking about a lot of things, and the person I was working with, I was quite open, so they knew that I was polyamorous, they knew that I was queer, didn't know that I went to sex parties a lot, because I thought you don't need people to know that. And then someone else arrived to come and see, who was also dating the person I was dating, but I also knew from sex parties.
Yeah.
So this other person arrives and I'm like, how do I make it clear while we're in a space that we'd normally talk about that sort of thing to the the person who's just arrived, not to mention that. And I can't remember, I just remember just trying to do some eyes to the scary girlfriend and trying to do some things. And then obviously the person I work with picking up something interesting that I'm not supposed to know now. I don't think the conversation happened, but I remember feeling, and also a bit pissed because you'd had some cocktails and you're like, I have to handle this situation, but I'm going to do it really obviously because I'm a bit pissed in the middle of the afternoon. So then I'm sort of doing like conspicuous eye rolling and head shaking and like giving, yeah. It was, and there were literally like about 4 of us in there. It was really early, so it wasn't. It was just really, and I remember the person behind the bar finding the whole thing, knew something was going on and just finding it, like there wasn't anyone else in, so she could legitimately just laugh at us. So I remember that being incredibly embarrassing. And then travelling back, because I worked on the other side of London, but so did the person who worked with me. So we had to travel on the tube back, and there was all this. So what was all that about? And I was like, well,
what could you mean?
I don't know what you mean. That person, they date my girlfriend as well. You know, we're probably, yeah, well, there was something else? No, nothing else.
Oh no, and then how much longer did you work with that person? Did you live it down?
Oh, that person had to put up with quite a lot. Yeah. I'm not sure I lived it down, but it was better than the time that I went out, and that was at the RVT, got a bit trolleyed and ended up being piled into a taxi with a very attractive person thinking, this is great, this never happened before. But then waking up at her house without any clothes to wear to work and thinking I can't wear a t-shirt to work that says, tofu makes you gay, eat more tofu. So phoning up this person that worked for me, this long-suffering person that worked for me, saying, have you got some clothes that will fit me that look like work clothes? Because I can't get back to get any clothes, and I'm in this place in the arse end of nowhere at some girl's house, and her being like, I've never had one of my bosses ask me that before. I'll see what I can do. Yeah, I think...
Well, did she come through?
Yeah, yeah.
It's the kind of person you want to work with, isn't it?
She was a good person to work with. I think generally I've been really lucky with the people I work with, particularly who've worked for me. It's generally arsehole managers that were above that I've had issues with, as everyone has. Yeah. But not totally.
Who told you that First Out was closing?
I think it came on a news thing on social media. Someone shared the story with me on Facebook, I think. And then it went round really quick, you know, it was in the paper, and then everyone was on the phone going, did you know? It was a bit like, yeah. It seemed like it was quite a big thing.
And it was.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like other venues have shut down that I didn't know for ages, and other ones that shut down that I was like, occasionally went there. But this seemed more of a thing. I think the only one that would have been bigger, and they didn't shut in the end, was the whole thing over whether the RVT was going to go.
Yes, yeah.
Which would have been monstrous.
Yeah, that would have been huge. And so in that period between finding out that it was going to shut and it shutting, did you get to go back?
No, it was a really short period of time. I feel like the articles were like, the last days, like literally, I feel like it was really quick. I don't know exactly how long, but I feel like I was like, can we organise to go there? No, there isn't time. Because I think by that point I was off on a boat somewhere, so I wasn't sort of as stationary, if you like. Yeah. I really can't remember what was going on, but I can remember trying to work out if we could get there and figuring out it was like literally closing within days and we weren't going to be able to make it. And also feeling outraged that there hadn't been a big, you know, there was no final event or we're going to have it just felt like, for a place that felt like such a community, it was just like, oh, and we're closing. There was no last night event that I was aware of, unless no one just invited me. It just felt like it just was open and then shut with no fanfare or anything. But some articles, so the articles were like, yes, this iconic thing. And I was like, then why aren't we Doing loads.
Now, did you ever go to First Out Cafe? Do you have any stories or photos or anecdotes that you'd like to share with me about that place? If you do, then please get in touch through social media. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter with the handle K Anderson Music. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but also a concept record. I have been writing songs about venues and the people who live their lives there, and we'll be releasing songs over the next 12 or so months. The first song from the set is called Well-Groomed Boys, and you can hear it playing underneath my talking right this very second. If you like the sound of it and you want to hear more, then please find me on streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and have a listen. Finally, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please do subscribe to the podcast, and it would make a huge difference if you were able to tell your friends or anyone who you think would be interested in finding out more. My name is Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces.